Are potatoes good for type 2 diabetes? Conventional wisdom suggests that potatoes should be avoided or um, they should be consumed minimally by people with type 2 diabetes because their glycemic index is fairly high, above 70, while rice and pasta have a lower glycemic index, below 55. So they seem to be more beneficial for type 2 diabetes and have also been recommended by the current guidelines. However, a recent study published in Clinical Nutrition by a research group in Melbourne, Australia, suggests that things might be different and challenges this conventional wisdom. The researchers were using a design of a randomized crossover trial, and they took 24 people with type 2 diabetes treated by diet or metformin, one of the drugs used for the treatment of type 2 diabetes. They gave them a standard breakfast containing 25% of daily energy intake and a standard lunch containing 35% of the total daily energy intake. And then they compared 4 different dinners. Each dinner contain the same amount of energy, 40% of energy intake, 50% coming from carbohydrates and 30% from fat. Now, 3 of the dishes contain potatoes with different cooking methods. So one of them used boiled potatoes as a part of a mixed meal. The second one, roasted potatoes. The third one, cooked and cooled down potatoes, which has been shown to increase the amount of resistant starch. And the fourth dish contained basmati rice, which has been conventionally recommended for people with type 2 diabetes over potatoes. The participants' mean age was 58 years. Their average BMI was 31.7. Their A1C was 7.3% on average, and they've had their diabetes for 9 years. Now, the findings are pretty fascinating. The researchers haven't found any substantial differences between the meals in terms of glucose control 2 hours after the meal. Insulin response was the lowest after basmati rice and was highest after the cooked and cooled potatoes. Now, the researchers were also using the continuous glucose monitoring for 24 hours. And they found out that, especially at night, the glucose response was the highest after the rice meal and was the lowest after roasted potatoes. So all the potato dishes reduce the glycemic response, the 24-hour glycemic response, particularly at night, and roasted potatoes were shown to be the best. This is the area under the curve for the night glycemic response being the highest after rice and being the lowest after roasted potatoes. So to summarize the results, there was no difference between the meals in terms of glucose levels 2 hours after the meal. However, there was a clear difference between the meals in insulin response, being the lowest after the rice and being the highest after the boiled and cooled potatoes. In terms of 24-hour and night glucose response, the potato dishes were beneficial compared with rice, the roasted potatoes being the best. So the take-home message for people with type 2 diabetes, if your postprandial, if your post-meal blood glucose tends to be too high, so if your glucose levels right after the meal tend to be too high, then cooked and cooled down potatoes might be the best option for you. And if your main problem is your fasting plasma glucose, and if your blood glucose goes up too much at night, then potatoes might be preferable over rice, and roasted potatoes seem to be the most beneficial. Potatoes seem to be beneficial for type 2 diabetes, according to this new study. And I'd like to hear from you. What has your experience been like consuming potatoes? Potatoes contain a lot of fiber and vitamin C and potassium, so they may provide very good nutrients, not only for people with type 2 diabetes, but also for healthy individuals. Thank you.